morning. Before I get started, may I test a bit the temperature in the room? May I know who is here mainly because you're interested in cryptocurrencies of all the applications that blockchain has? Show of hands, who is here mainly because of cryptocurrencies? Very few, very interesting, okay. Who of you is here because of all the other applications that blockchain has? Show of hands. I hope all the other hands go up, because why is everyone else here? Okay, great. That's interesting. May I know who of you is invested in cryptocurrencies? Show of hands. Okay, so interesting. So many of you, and still you're here because of other applications. I really love that. That's really great. Before I talk a bit about the three major problems that I personally see in cryptocurrencies, I quickly want to tell you where I'm coming from, because it might explain a bit better on where my views are coming from and what this perspective is. I used to be a professional kite surfer for 10 years. I got to travel the world at a really young age and had a lot of fun in life. And then my mom always told me, Julian, you can't be a surfer your entire life. This is not going to work. You need to do something for real. And so I became a medical doctor, and I had seen a lot of accidents. And so I thought being a trauma surgeon would be a really good fit. And I studied, and I started working in Innsbruck, Austria, which where I'm from. And it was what I wanted to do, work in a field where I could help people. And this was in 2011, and quickly I noticed that this is not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I didn't want to be stuck in one place. I wanted to disrupt something. I wanted to try new things. And if there's one thing as a doctor you should not do, is try to be disruptive and try to do surgeries different, how it's been tested. No patient appreciates that. And so in 2012, I quit medicine, and I moved to Asia. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but in 2014, I met who is now my co-founder. His name is Toby. He's also from Austria, and he shared about this new technology called blockchain. And he described some really wonderful things to me. I'd heard about Bitcoin in 2011, but it was explained in such a scammy way that I didn't understand what the purpose of this thing was. And in 2014, when Toby described this to me, he actually used a different example that I'm going to share with you today, a medical example. But I understood the power that decentralization could have in our society. And it was what, in 2015, made me move to Singapore. And we started a company called 10x. At 10x, we make debit cards that people can fund with cryptocurrencies, and they can use these cards to spend Bitcoin, Ether, Litecoin, and so on, all around the world, literally anywhere where credit cards are accepted. And this is what this vision was in 2015, and that has been driving us over the past years. Last year, we did one of the largest ICOs in the blockchain ecosystem. We raised around $80 million US. And the funny thing is, even though we benefited a lot from this ICO hype, I'm one of the biggest critics of the ICOs. And this is also something I'm going to talk about today. We have now a team of 60 employees in Singapore. We're one of the largest companies in this cryptocurrency ecosystem. And what's really important to me, and this is kind of this mission, is to give back. We got a lot from the ecosystem already. And that's how this movement, which I call making people crypto fit, it's a hashtag that I have where I really encourage people to learn about all these things and see on the one hand the positive sides, but see the negative sides. And I wrote a book last year called Cryptocurrencies Explained Simply. That book shot onto #1 of all of Amazon, because obviously with the hype in November, December, all this cryptocurrency movement came up. While I got a lot out of this ecosystem, I do have a lot of red flags. And these red flags are the things that I want to talk with you about. And this is why it's time to flip the switch and talk about the three major problems I might be seeing with cryptocurrencies. Let me start off with something completely different. We have a mathematical solution, x plus y equals 10. What's x, what's y? Simple question, impossible to answer, because how many answers do we have for this problem? An unlimited amount, right? X plus y can be anything. It can be 9 plus 1, it can be 8 plus 2, 7 plus 3, 6 plus 4, and so on. Okay, what about this problem? 6 plus 4 equals, it's not a trick question, 10. Simple answer. Now, why is this relevant? In 2008, 2009, Satoshi Nakamoto proposed a solution, a peer-to-peer cash system, digital, decentralized. It doesn't need a central bank. It doesn't need a central authority. It's a solution. But to what problem? What's the problem that this solution is supposed to be solving? And this is a really relevant question, because so many companies, so many people come out with solutions, and then they struggle finding the problem that this solution should be solving. Instead of working the other way around and saying, this is our problem, let's find a really good solution to this problem. And that's what I want to be talking today, especially when we talk about all these different derivatives of decentralization. Now, what's the problem that decentralization is supposed to be solving? It's the problem of not having a centralized consensus, about misusing centralized consensus. And this problem, decentralization is supposed to be solving. How can this be solved? It can be solved either through a blockchain where we chain all the information blocks together. It can be solved through a tangle. It could be solved through a hash graph. Whatever technology it is, it's a decentralized ledger technology that's supposed to solve this problem. And now it starts getting really interesting. This concept of a blockchain has so many applications, and that's why I asked you to raise your hands. Only a few of you are actually here because of one of its applications, cryptocurrencies. What's cryptocurrencies supposed to be solving? What's the problem? And why is there so many of them? Now, even though I'm quite critical, trust me, I'm one of its biggest proponents. And one of the things I have learned in medicine is to never see things black or white. There's always something in between. There's always a probability. And this is why I love talking about this. Because I love talking about it because I see its upsides and I see its downsides. And based on rationale, I try to make a decision. And that's what's really about. It's not about being religious about crypto being great or crypto being evil. It's about finding the data that matches one's decision. So, let's start with the very first challenge, the first problem that I see in cryptocurrencies. What's the real problem that cryptocurrencies, just like Bitcoin and so on, is supposed to be solving? Is it that of instant transactions? I'm not sure. There's many centralized institutions, like PayPal, like many banks, many bank transfers that are even faster than cryptocurrencies. I could send a bank transfer in Europe from one bank to another, and it's instant. I can do this globally using PayPal. So I don't need a decentralized system to make instant transactions. I don't. If there's no real problem, what's going to happen is you can always have a hype for a certain amount of time, but in the long run, it's not going to sustain. If we can't find a real problem, we're not going to have a good solution. Is cryptocurrencies going to bring more financial access to second and third world markets, to Africa, to South America? How many people in Africa are actually using cryptocurrencies? How many people in Venezuela are actually using cryptocurrencies? These are the markets where people talk about this is what cryptocurrency is really great for. Not many, I'm telling you. It's not many. And why is it not many? It's not many because many of these people don't have access to the internet, they don't have smartphones, they don't have access to the infrastructure that's needed for cryptocurrencies. So what's the problem that cryptocurrencies is supposed to be solving? My personal opinion, what I came to after balancing the up and downsides, is that of what I call digital gold. And digital gold is not its digital counterpart that's a little gold bar that sits in a safe and is supposed to hedge against, I don't know, something. Cryptocurrencies is my hedge against so many things that could happen to the centralized world. I could ask here, who of you is holding gold? And I'm pretty sure many of your hands would go up. Okay? So you're holding gold. And if I'd ask you, who of you has actually ever used or needed gold? Pretty much most of your hands would go back down. So why are you holding gold if you haven't used it and you're not needing it right now? We're holding it because of a hedge if central banks screw up, if our currency system goes down. Cryptocurrencies, to me personally, is that hedge not only against a central bank or a currency screwing up, it's something way deeper. It's a potential collapse of an entire system that would allow me to go into cryptocurrencies. It would be one country, one region going berserk and becoming totalitarian, trying to take away any kind of asset. If I wanted to, I could go and I could create a memory palace and remember all 24 words of my seed, and no one in this world would be able to take away my private key that controls the cryptocurrencies that I store. I don't need to write them down on a paper. I don't have to put them in a bank vault. There's no alternative to this technology. It doesn't exist. It simply doesn't. The problem to create a hedge against so many solutions out there that might collapse is completely unique to what cryptocurrencies can do. The problem I just see is it gets explained so rarely out there because in the press it's always about Bitcoin being able to make transactions peer-to-peer instant. They're free. And then we look and we realize they're not. We realize that there's fees. We realize that they're not instant. We realize they take some extra time. We realize that in many, many countries, they're actually not applicable right now. And that's where there's a lot of discussion on, are we in a bubble? Are cryptocurrencies here to stay? That is my explanation. And I really invite you to think about this. Think about this problem of creating a hedge against so many potential risks out there when they come to a collapse. What is the solution to this? Just like gold is the solution to one specific problem. That is why I think there's a very fair use point for cryptocurrencies. But this brings me to the second challenge, and the second challenge is it really legitimate to have, and this was taken a couple of days ago, 1,568 possibilities for this hedge. Now, of course, there's a couple of assets in there, utility tokens, that probably most of them are going to go away because they have no real use case, and they're just here because companies raise money. They're all going to disappear. But what about all the other thousands of currencies that have been created and to promise to be this digital gold? You can't create a second kind of gold. Gold is there. You can't just create a second one. You have silver, you have platinum, completely different physical abilities. Bitcoin, it's number one at the moment. There could just be a number two, and suddenly we have Litecoin. Then suddenly we have a Bitcoin Cash. Now, which one is this hedge to so much risk? And that's a fair question that gets asked by so many people. To be honest, I don't have a proper answer to this question other than I believe we're probably going to have one or two of these hedges against all these risks. And if you ask me, it's going to be those that have the biggest network effects. It's not those that have the best press. It's not those that have the most exciting announcements. It's not those that have the most trading volumes on an exchange. All these things are being faked right now. They're being misused right now. They create this bad rep that cryptocurrencies have, sadly. It's going to be those that have the most secondary industries. They have people that are relying on these industries already. It's about things that can't be replaced. Facebook right now is such a great example. Facebook has so many problems right now. They're getting dragged through the dirt in the press, righteously or not righteously, what do I know? But how many people actually deregister from Facebook? Do you know how many friends I have who tell me, man, Facebook, this piece of, I'm going to deregister. I'm going to delete my account. Yeah, right. 1 week later, they're still there. They're still writing with their friends. What happened? Why did you not delete your account? Well, you know, all my friends are there. I want to stay in touch. It's so easy to communicate. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Network effects. The currencies that I think are going to survive, it's probably going to be 2 or 3 max. It's going to be those with the biggest network effects and those with the biggest second nature technologies or second nature industries. And that is why personally I'm such a big proponent of Bitcoin, even though Bitcoin has so many problems, but it has so many people that are tied into it. So many industries that are already relying on it. I don't believe in much hype. The best technology does not always win. We see this over and over and over again. The internet is such a good example. The way the internet is structured is actually not a good way. It could be structured in a way better way. Why did it supersede? Because people started using it, and then it's so difficult to use something else. Okay, now let's talk about the third problem. The third problem is, how can we create a decentralized system where no one is in charge by definition, that can adapt to the only thing that will never change, and that is change itself. If we think back 10 years ago, what we needed 10 years ago and what we need today, it changed completely. It's a completely new thing. And the way how companies and communities and countries adapt to that is because there's a leader, there's someone in charge who says, this is the direction we're gonna go. And because that person is the most certain, that person has good rationale, good explanations, the community follows. How does this work when there's no one in charge? And this is a very interesting question. Is a cryptocurrency great because it has a maximum cap, like Bitcoin at the maximum of 21 million? Should there be a constant inflation? Should there be an inflation of 3%? Who adapts that inflation in a decentralized system? Who is in charge of money supply? In a centralized system, it's straightforward. In a decentralized system, it's not. So there have been this proposal of so-called smart rules. Rules that automatically get programmed into the algorithm. And these rules should be able to guide us, not only over the next 10 years, but over the next 50, 100, or how long we can imagine that such a financial system is actually going to last that many years. And to me, everything else can be solved. I believe the idea of what the problem is crypto should be solving is solved. I think the problem of currency is going to be collapsing and 2 or 3 are going to survive, that's natural selection. The reason I'm bringing up this problem, because I assume there's so many smart and talented people here in the room, and I hope that many of you, or some of you, are going to think about some things like that. Because I personally, right now, don't have a good answer on what these smart rules should look like. I'm not sure if anyone on this planet has an answer right now. But I tell you, I'm quite confident in one thing. I'm confident that we as a human race, we're always going to find a solution. And one of the 7 or 8 billion people is going to come up with a really, 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 really good idea to this. And it just takes one. It doesn't need 1,000. It doesn't need 1,000,000. It just takes one person to come up with a really good idea. And so the odds, in my opinion, are in favor to this problem that I don't have an answer to right now. So if I look at an entire overview of what blockchain applications are, I personally think cryptocurrencies get a bad press in an unfair way. I do see why it gets it. It gets it because people don't think about it. It's because people are not rational about it. They look at one single aspect. They don't see all the facets. So that is why applications like data storage, the application that got me into blockchain. Me as a medical doctor, one of the most interesting problems that can be solved is how can a patient store his or her data without anyone else being able to access it? It's a really exciting problem to solve. With blockchain, I can always control my own data. It's such a real problem. How many times did I have a patient in front of me, couldn't talk, couldn't speak, because that person just had a skiing accident? Unconscious. I had no clue who this person was. Sometimes we didn't even know where this person was from. Imagine there was a way how we, at this moment, could access his or her medical history and could then see, okay, this person's from there, has these problems, this medical history, and so on and so on. It would be a fantastic solution. It could not be solved in a centralized way. It's, by definition, not solvable, because no one would trust it. Here's the challenge, though. The real challenge is, how can you identify yourself towards a machine? How do you identify yourself against something when no one is in charge? It's a real problem. So why are people so excited about this application when there's actually some real problems still to be solved? I am excited about this, but I want to highlight some of the real-world problems that these applications have. Transparency, we talk about energy, we talk about all these things. I think transparency through a blockchain, one of the biggest problems that get be solved through a blockchain. I think it's really, 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 really exciting. And I think it should get a lot of press. But then we have the same problem. How do humans interact with this blockchain without having a centralized third party that could manipulate certain things? Diamonds on a blockchain, one of the oldest applications I've seen. I still remember I was in Israel, 2015, a young startup there pitched this idea of diamonds on the blockchain for transparency. And I was like, what a great application for a blockchain. Until I started asking myself the question, who actually registered that diamond onto the blockchain? What about if that person is corrupt? What if that person is not legit and then suddenly the wrong data is on the blockchain, unchangeable? There's still some problems. Elections, great application. Fantastic. Elections is such an unfair process. We as citizens have to trust the counterparty, in this case the government, that they're not going to cheat on us during the election process. That's why there's so much election fraud and so much distrust. How fantastic would a blockchain be? It would. It's a really great application. But how is the token, the voting thing, actually going to go to the human being without a centralized party? So while the election might get better, how about the logistics of giving someone the token? Who's responsible for delivering the voting credentials? One of the most interesting things, smart contracts. Huge, huge applications in insurance, in IoTs. IoTs, fantastic application. We have all these little things that can communicate among each other without needing other human beings. And then, I'm not going to name the name of the company, you have IoT thermostats that control the temperature of the house. They're decentralized. No one can hack them, supposedly, and they regulate the room, and they can communicate among each other. That was the case last year, that one of these companies with the thermostats got hacked. These thermostats are not, I mean, you can destroy them with a hammer, but other than that, you can't cut them off. They regulate themselves. And they got hacked, and there was a ransom request, and you had to pay a certain amount, let's say $1,000. And if you don't pay that, every day, the temperature of the thermostat goes up 1 degree. It's 20 yesterday, today it's 21, tomorrow it's 22, 23, 24. Well, how tolerable are you to temperature increase? And that's how long you can delay not having to pay a ransom. No way, no one could stop that. Insurance, such a great application for smart contracts. Hey, every month I insure my house, I pay $50 every month, and I insure my house. And if something should happen to my house, I can just go and say, hey, please, my house just burned down. Could you please pay me $200,000? Because this is what my house is worth. Worst nightmare if in that moment the insurance company says, sorry, we're not paying. Sorry, because of something that you didn't consider, we're not paying. Worst nightmare of everyone. So why not put this into a smart contract? Smart contract, remove the human being, which means I make a contract, I pay $50, and if I can prove, maybe through an oracle, we can decentralize that even. So there's definite proof that the house burned down. Let's assume this. There's definite proof, decentralized, no central party. House burned down. The smart contract, by definition, pays me $250,000. It would be great. It would remove the central party. It would remove any kind of human decision making. It's automated. What's the catch? The catch is, I'm here and I'm insuring my house, and my neighbor here says, wow, Julian, that's a really great idea. You're paying $50 into the smart contract every month, and if your house burns down, you get $200,000? Let me get in that. Let me also pay $50 a month, and if your house burns down, I get $200,000. And neighbor C says, that's a great, fantastic deal. Let me pay $50, and if your house burns down, I get $200,000. After a month, there's 30 people all paying $50 a month into that smart contract that if your house burns down, they all get $200,000. At some point, there's more interest for your house to burn down than not to burn down. And there's no way to stop this, because it's a smart contract that doesn't think, that is not controllable. It just does what it's supposed to be doing. So to kind of summarize this talk, on the one hand, I talk about how things are half full and how things are half empty, and you can look at it from either angle. But at the end, the people it takes, and that's what I try to inspire, is the people who get stuff done. The people who say, I don't care if the glass is half full or half empty, I'm going to sell it. It's the entrepreneurs. It's the people who are innovative, who are disruptive, who go against the odds, who don't care about all the things that might not work, but they see this one single thing that could work. And this is the people that I look for our own company. This is the people that I look for in cryptocurrencies. And that's the people that I look for in any other kind of field that blockchain offers. And I think there's never been a better time for all this. I think even though I'm kind of making fun of a lot of things and I'm kind of being critical and kind of cynic, the technology has never been better as it is right now. Society, for the very first time, is as open as it gets to this system. And we all agree that the economy needs all this. So I'm really, really excited that many of you join this movement of making people crypto fit in all kinds of areas, in blockchain, in cryptocurrencies, in all its applications and forms. And I'm really great that so many of you are here and you're open-minded and you see the solutions, but you're not blind followers who blank out all its downsides, but you understand the hurdles are there to be solved. And that's why I'm really grateful and I'm really highly appreciative. If you want to have more of all this, then have a look at our app. It's called 10x. You can download it on Android or on iOS. If you want, you can go on Amazon. There's a book called Cryptocurrencies Simply Explained. And I want to thank you for this. And we're going to go on the event app and answer some of the questions that you might have. Thank you so much. You see the questions? Fantastic. Can you send $1 million through PayPal? Question mark. So I understand where the question is going. The question is going that in Bitcoin you can definitely send $1 million. But I have transferred, for our company, I've transferred $20 million. And I've had no problems. I don't know if you have ever transferred double-digit millions amounts. I've never had problems. Did we have to do KYC? Yes, we had to. Did we have to do AML? Yes, we had to. So my point being, of course, you can do this with Bitcoin, but of course, you can do this with other solutions. And that's always the really important questions that you have to ask that I kind of try to instill. Just because you can do something with something doesn't mean there's 50 other applications that can do this already as well. So the question is not so much, if I jump back to the equation, the question is not so much, what's the solution, because we have unlimited amounts of what's the result? Because we have an unlimited amount of things that can lead to that result. We have to ask, is there a problem that has one unique solution? So here, on this question that many of you have upvoted, and please go in there and upvote the questions, because otherwise I don't know which questions to answer. So the point being, I try to find problems where there is no other solution other than the one as a cryptocurrency. So sending $1 million through PayPal, in my opinion, there's probably 50 different solutions to this. And I can definitely also do it with PayPal. I just probably have to talk to PayPal. I've never sent $1 million through PayPal. But I've done it through a bank transfer, and I've done it through many other ways. With Bitcoin, it's also doable. But just because it's doable with Bitcoin doesn't mean Bitcoin is a great application for it. So why do I need your 10x debit card if it's only about hedging and digital gold? Our vision at 10x is actually quite large. We're working on something called Comet, which is a decentralized system that can connect blockchains. And it can connect blockchains simply like the TCP/IP protocol can connect intranets to a large internet. And it does this open source, it does this accessible for anyone. So that's this big picture. But we believe something like this will only be needed in probably 5 to 10 years. So it's a very, very long vision. It's a very big shot. It actually is not, doesn't have anything to do specifically with cryptocurrencies. It's actually quite broad. However, we don't want to be a company that just sits there and waits for this time to come. If you look at Uber, Uber has this big vision of being the TCP/IP of the real world. It wants to transport things between point A and B, and these things can be humans, it can be food, it can be anything. But if the company 5 years ago would have said, you know what, we're going to wait until we have all these self-driving cars, and until things and beings want to be transported from A and B, and then we're going to start our business, there is no business. So you need to solve something that is a problem right now. And when we got into crypto in 2015, we realized that people will want to use cryptocurrencies. They will. Even though I don't think it's its best use case, I totally agree. But the problem is there, and people want to use it. And so for us, it's a really easy problem. how do you use cryptocurrencies? How do you make them spendable? And that's the problem we wanted to solve. And that was a very easy problem for us to solve. And that's why there's so many people who are interested in this. Even though it might not be the best use case, I totally agree. But the long term for us is actually not in currencies only. It's quite broader. Salt then is asking, if a centralized economy goes bust, do you really think it's feasible that the majority of its people will trust in the value of a cryptocurrency? I think, Sultan, the question is quite fair. I think it will depend a lot on what time frame we're talking about. If it happens tomorrow, probably not. I just think that the probability of, let's say, a first world government, North America, Europe, some of the major governments in Asia, that they go bust tomorrow, I also don't think it's very likely. I think it's possible, but it's unlikely. But let's say over the next 20 years, I think there's a fair possibility for this to happen. And to me, it's the same as the internet. 10 years ago, no one cared about online reputation. No companies cared about having a Facebook profile, cared about what their Google ranking is. They didn't care about what their Yelp review is. Today, any business has to do this. And it's just a shift of mind. And I think over the next 10 years, 20 years, we're going to see a very similar shift. So I'm quite optimistic about that. How can a smart contract decide that the house wasn't burned intentionally? So what you do there, and I mean, obviously a smart contract can't decide themselves, or him or herself, or itself. What happens is you use so-called oracles. An oracle is, and I'm not going to go into the details, it's basically a group that gets selected randomly. And this group has an incentive to pick the right answer. Let's leave it at this, or the best answer. And if you make the group large enough, depending on how difficult the problem is to solve, you can, with a very high degree of certainty, expect that this group, called an oracle, gets the right answer. So you would put this into a smart contract. You would put this into the oracle definition and say, OK, this group of, let's say, 100 people or 200 people has to get the best answer possible. And so let's leave it as a very rough, raw overview. Because, I mean, oracles are actually a topic of itself that we could talk about for 2 hours. Great. Let's talk about the last questions, or the last question. Julian, do you think cryptocurrencies will replace fiat? So I'm going to answer this question twofold. I think cryptocurrencies will replace fiat, but I don't think Bitcoin will replace fiat. What I mean is, over the next 20 years, I'm pretty sure most governments will switch to some form of a cryptocurrency, even though that cryptocurrency will not be how a public or an open source cryptocurrency as Bitcoin is. It will be a governmentally controlled cryptocurrency. There's many, many advantages of a cryptocurrency towards fiat if you are the governing body and you're the body who is in charge and you can define the rules. You have way more possibilities and mechanisms and very little downside, actually, towards a fiat currency if you are the controlling body. So I think cryptocurrencies will replace fiat, but I don't think that centrally or governmental controlled cryptocurrencies will go extinct. I think they will have a place and they will be connecting to public cryptocurrencies. Great. Everyone, it was such a pleasure. I hope I got to answer some questions for you, and I hope I managed to give you some value. If you have any other questions, we can happily chat afterwards. I wish you a really great day. It's a fantastic stage, and so have a really wonderful day. Thank you so much.